If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel invisible, you'll want to hear what happened next, the moment the balance shifted. The crisp crack of a flawless shot echoed through the elite shooters club, followed by roaring applause from affluent members clad in high-end shooting attire. Blake Radcliffe lowered his custom-built Remington, a confident smirk spreading across his sun-kissed face as another bullseye appeared on the target screen. This was his domain, a place where wealth, influence, and precision built walls too high for outsiders to climb. At the country's most exclusive shooting range, Emma Miller lingered by the entrance, gripping a weathered leather purse. Her modest blue cardigan and off-the-rack jeans made her stand out like a dandelion among roses. At 35, she wasn't young enough to turn heads, nor accomplished enough to command respect in this opulent crowd. Behind the counter, a receptionist with flawless blonde hair and a polished smile glanced up, then quickly dismissed her as unimportant. "Excuse me," Emma said softly. "I'd like to sign up for today's open practice session." The receptionist looked her over again, gaze trailing from Emma's scuffed shoes to her simple ponytail. "Members only," she replied curtly. Emma inhaled quietly and reached in her purse, pulling out a wrinkled envelope. "I have a day pass." It was a gift. From across the room, Blake noticed a newcomer. At 42, he was the embodiment of elite success, 5-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist, and the poster face for Remington's luxury line. Backed by his family's oil empire, he'd been groomed for greatness since childhood. Well, Blake said loudly enough for the room to hear. "Looks like someone took a wrong exit on the way to Walmart." His entourage erupted in laughter, their amusement drawing more eyes to Emma as she quietly walked toward the beginner's range, her gaze fixed on the floor. Rebecca Johnson, the club's manager and a former marksman herself, frowned at Blake's remark but stayed silent. At the farthest lane, Emma carefully set her purse on the shelf and unwrapped a small cloth bundle. With deliberate movements, she revealed a plain Glock 19, reliable, but far from the custom firearms surrounding her. Blake and his friends wandered closer, eager for sport. $10 says she can't even hit the paper, one joked. Blake chuckled. "Make it 10,000. I bet she's never fired a gun in her life." He sauntered toward her station, tone dripping with mock politeness. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "Sure you're in the right place? This isn't a knitting club." Emma lifted her gaze, her steady hazel eyes locking onto his sharp blue ones. The quiet confidence in her stare caught him off guard for a moment. "I'm just here to practice," she replied evenly. Blake smirked. "Practice, sweetheart. This place is for professionals. Tell you what, 10 grand says you can't hit a bullseye from 50 yards. Emma's expression barely shifted, though a faint spark flickered behind her calm demeanor. "I don't have that kind of money," she said softly. "Then it's simple," Blake said. "You make the shot, I pay. You miss, you walk out and don't come back. Deal?" Rebecca approached, her voice measured. "Mr. Radcliffe, maybe we should let our guest shoot in peace." Blake waved her off without even turning. "Relax, Rebecca. It's just a friendly wager." Emma's eyes drifted to the gold band on her ring finger. She turned at once, the motion small but deliberate. "All right," she said quietly. Blake's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise before he grinned smugly. "Excellent. Folks, looks like we got ourselves a show." No one noticed the subtle transformation in Emma's stance, her back straightening, shoulders loosening, feet aligning with effortless balance. No one saw the expert's grip she took on the pistol or the rhythmic control of her breathing. And none of them realized that the simple ring on her hand once belonged to one of SEAL Team SIX's most decorated snipers. 3 years earlier, under a bleak April sky, Emma had stood at Arlington National Cemetery as the sharp volleys of a 21-gun salute shattered the silence. The folded flag pressed to her chest felt unbearably heavy as she watched her husband's casket descend into the earth. Master Chief Nathan Miller had served his country for 15 years, earning medals, and the quiet nickname, the Ghost, for his deadly precision. The official report listed his death as a helicopter crash during a classified mission. But Emma knew there were truths that would stay buried forever. They'd met in Burlington, Vermont, Nathan visiting a wounded teammate, Emma living her quiet life as an accountant. Their chance meeting in a coffee shop had stretched from polite apologies into hours of conversation. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony attended by close friends and Nathan's vigilant brothers-in-arms. Being married to a SEAL meant learning to live with absence, secrecy, and worry. Nathan would vanish for weeks, sometimes months, returning with scars he couldn't explain and nightmares he couldn't outrun. "I wish I could tell you everything," he'd whisper, rough thumb tracing her cheek. "But this I can tell you. You're the reason I fight to come home." During one recovery period, grounded by a torn ligament, Nathan brought Emma to a shooting range. "If I'm gone as much as I am," he said, adjusting her stance, "I want to know you can protect yourself." What began as self-defense soon became their shared ritual. Nathan proved to be a patient teacher, and Emma, a natural. "You've got it," he murmured the first time she hit the bullseye. "Steady hands, sharp eyes, calm heart. That's what makes a real marksman." Over the next 3 years, whenever he was home, they trained together. He taught her every nuance, stance, breath control, sight alignment, trigger discipline. "Shooting isn't about rage," he'd say. "It's about control of your body, your breath, and your fear." For Emma, those sessions became sacred, a wordless bond between them. Sometimes his teammates would join in. "Boss won't stop bragging about you." One of them, Michael Reeves, had joked. "Says you're a better natural shot than half the guys he's trained." The last time they went shooting together was 2 days before. Before Nathan left for his final deployment, they'd gone to the range one last time. He'd been quieter than usual, barely focusing on his own targets, his attention fixed entirely on Emma. "Promise me something," he said, voice low and rough against her ear. "Promise me you'll keep practicing, even when I'm not here." She nodded, not realizing the weight behind his words. After the funeral, Emma couldn't bring herself to step inside another range. Nathan's weapons stayed locked away, untouched. She packed her life into boxes and moved to Boston, starting over in a corporate accounting firm where no one knew her as the widow of a fallen SEAL. Then just last week, a package had arrived, no return address, only a familiar handwriting inside. It was from Michael Reeves. Inside was a day pass to the Elite Shooters Club and a short note. "Nathan would want you to keep your promise. 3 years is long enough to grieve alone. Come back to the living, Emma." Now, standing under the bright lights of the Elite Shooters Club, with Blake Radcliffe's smug challenge hanging in the air, Emma felt something stir. A faint echo of who she used to be before grief had hollowed her out. She raised the Glock, and instinct took command. The world shrank to 3 points: herself, the weapon, and the target. She inhaled deeply, held her breath, released half, and squeezed the trigger. The gun's sharp report cracked through the hush. The mechanical hum of the target retrieval system filled the silence that followed. Blake kept his smirk, but a flicker of doubt crossed his eyes as he noticed Emma's perfect stance. The target glided closer, each metallic click drawing out the tension. When it finally stopped, a single clean hole pierced the exact center of the bullseye. The silence that followed was absolute. Blake and his entourage stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. Emma calmly set her pistol down, her expression composed. Blake snatched the target, eyes darting over it. "Beginner's luck," he said sharply. "Anyone can get lucky once." Rebecca stepped forward, professionalism giving way to admiration. "That was an extraordinary shot, miss." "Emma," she replied quietly. "Emma Miller." Rebecca nodded, offering a respectful smile. "Miss Miller, you're welcome to use our advanced range anytime. You're clearly no beginner." Before Emma could respond, Blake's voice cut through. "Not so fast. One shot doesn't make her a marksman. Let's see if she can repeat it, with real stakes this time." A murmur rippled through the crowd gathering around. $50,000, Blake announced, pulling out his checkbook with theatrical flair. 3 bullseyes in a row at 75 yards. Miss even one, and you admit publicly that you cheated, and you walk away. Senator Williams, standing nearby, placed a warning hand on Blake's shoulder. "Blake, this isn't necessary." Blake shrugged him off. "What's wrong, Senator? Scared her little trick won't work again?" For a moment, Emma considered leaving. She hadn't come for drama or recognition, only to keep her promise. But something about Blake's arrogance, his casual cruelty, reignited a fire she hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every quiet person who'd ever been mocked or dismissed. "I'll take your challenge," she said softly. "On one condition. If I win, the $50,000 goes to the Veteran Support Foundation." Blake hesitated for a second, then nodded with a smirk. "Fine. It's not like you're going to win anyway." As Emma moved to the 75-yard line, Rebecca approached her quietly. "Miss Miller," she said, "you should know, Mr. Radcliffe holds the club record at this distance. No one's beaten him in 5 years." Emma nodded, appreciating the concern. "Thank you, Miss Johnson, but I'll manage." Rebecca studied her carefully, noting the calm poise in Emma's eyes that didn't match her modest appearance. Meanwhile, Blake was putting on a show. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, raising his arms to the growing crowd, "we're about to witness either the luckiest fluke in shooting history or a spectacular failure. 3 bullseyes at 75 yards with a stock handgun. Impossible for an amateur." Emma loaded a fresh magazine, her movements measured and precise. Nathan's voice echoed in her memory. "When the pressure's on, fall back on your training. Let your body remember what your mind forgets." The range fell silent, so silent that even the hum of the air vents sounded loud. For the first shot, Emma took her time, adjusting to the longer distance. The report of the gun echoed cleanly. A perfect hit. Blake's jaw tightened. The second shot came quicker, her body aligning instinctively. Another bullseye. Before the third, she twisted her wedding band once, feeling Nathan beside her in spirit, and fired. The bullet struck dead center again. Blake's face drained of color, disbelief freezing him in place. Rebecca retrieved the 3 targets, holding them up for all to see. Each was flawless. "Congratulations, Ms. Miller," she said, awe in her voice. "That was remarkable." Blake tore the targets from her hands, scanning them furiously. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No one just walks in and shoots like this. She must have rigged it." Emma stayed composed, but her tone hardened. "We had an agreement, Mr. Radcliffe." "An agreement with a cheater," he snapped. "I'm not paying $50,000 for a trick." Rebecca stepped forward, her voice firm. "Mr. Radcliffe, Ms. Miller's shots were witnessed by dozens of members, including Senator Williams. They were legitimate." Blake spun toward her, finger jabbing the air inches from her face. "Know your place, Rebecca. One call to the board, and you're out of a job." The threat silenced her, though her expression turned to steel. Emma watched quietly, eyes steady. "If you're accusing me of cheating," Emma said calmly, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." Blake sneered. "Privately? So you can dodge the consequences?" "No. Let's settle this right here." He turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I propose a real test, 1 week from today. A formal competition. Me versus our mystery shooter. 10 stations, multiple distances, club-provided gear, so there's no funny business." Emma realized she'd been drawn into something far bigger than she intended. A part of her wanted to disappear back into anonymity, but another, stronger part refused to back down. "I accept," she said evenly. "Same terms. If I win, the $50,000 goes to the Veteran Support Foundation." Blake's grin was sharp and cold. "Deal. And when I win, you'll explain to everyone exactly how you pulled your little trick." As the spectators dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma once more. "That was either very brave or very foolish," Rebecca said. "Blake doesn't lose easily, and he has powerful friends here." Emma nodded, adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. "I didn't come looking for drama. I only want to practice." Rebecca studied her a moment longer. "Still, you shot like a pro. Who are you really, Emma Miller?" Emma gathered her things. "Just someone keeping a promise," she murmured, voice barely above the hum of the club. What neither Emma nor anyone else realized was that Blake was already on the phone, directing his assistant to dig into Emma Miller's past by any means necessary. The tremor in his voice betrayed more than anger. It betrayed fear. He'd seen something in her technique the others had missed, the unmistakable imprint of military training, executed with a cold, practiced precision that couldn't be faked. Word of the confrontation rippled fast through Boston's social circles. By evening, Blake's inbox flooded with messages from friends, competitors, and reporters hungry for the identity of the mystery shooter. In his penthouse overlooking the Charles, his usual post-victory scotch sat untouched in a crystal tumbler as he tried to steady his frayed nerves. Jessica Thompson, his girlfriend, scrolled social feeds with a tightening expression. "They're calling her the unknown marksman," she said. Someone posted a shaky clip of the last shot. It's already got thousands of views. Blake downed his drink. "One lucky shot," he insisted. "By next week, everyone will know she's a fraud." Jessica looked up, unusually serious. "Blake, those weren't lucky shots. I've watched you compete for years. She's good. Really good." The ring of Blake's phone cut through the room. He straightened when he saw his investigator's number. "Tell me you found something," he barked. The reply was cautious. "Not much yet, Mr. Radcliffe. Emma Miller, 35, senior accountant at Meridian Financial. Moved here from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Clean record. No social media, no competitive shooting history." Blake's frustration spiked. "That's impossible. Nobody shoots like that without training. Find more." After the call, he paced. "Who is she? Where did she learn to shoot like that?" Jessica set her phone down, watching him uneasily. "Maybe just let it go. Pay the charity and move on." Blake stopped cold, turning to her with a hard edge. "It's not about the money. It's about reputation. My legacy." Across town, Emma sat at her kitchen table, the day replaying in her mind. Michael Reeves had called 3 times after she left the range. The shooting world was smaller than it looked, especially among those tied to the military. She made tea and stepped out onto a tiny balcony, feeling the strange mix of regret and relief that had followed the afternoon. Part of her regretted accepting the wager. Another part felt unexpectedly alive, as if something dormant had been nudged awake. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. After a beat, she answered. "Hello, Miss Miller? This is Rebecca Johnson from the Elite Shooters Club." Emma tensed. "Emma Miller," she corrected softly. Rebecca's voice carried an urgency she tried to mask. "I probably shouldn't be calling, but you should know. Blake has people digging into your background. He thinks you cheated." Emma closed her eyes. "I'm not surprised, just disappointed." "Listen," Rebecca said, lowering her tone. "I don't know where you learned to shoot like that, but Blake Radcliffe has influence. His family's tangled up in the city. If he feels threatened, he can make life difficult." Years as a SEAL's wife had taught Emma to tell real danger from bluster. "I'll be careful," she said, "but I intend to keep our agreement." After the call, she opened a small wooden box holding Nathan's medals, letters, and their wedding photo. Beneath the folded flag from the funeral lay Nathan's logbook, meticulous notes of training sessions and missions. She thumbed to the entries where he'd recorded their practice together. Emma, 50 yards, 9 out of 10 bullseyes. Natural talent, better than many recruits. The next morning, she called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Instead of the office, she drove to a public range well away from the elite shooters clientele and spent 8 hours drilling the techniques Nathan had taught her. Each shot was a conversation with his memory, a promise fulfilled, a thread connecting her to him across the gulf he'd left behind. That evening, Rebecca texted, "Blake is requesting rule changes for the competition. Now wants 10 different firearms at varying distances." The board had approved it. Emma understood the intent. Blake was reshaping the match to highlight the breadth of his experience, areas where she could be exposed. Her reply was simple. "Thanks for the heads up. No changes needed on my end." In his penthouse, Blake read the update and smiled thinly. "Perfect," he told Jessica. 10 stations, 10 different firearms. There's no way she can match me across that range." Jessica set her wine down carefully. "And if she does?" she asked. Blake's smile didn't warm. "Then I've arranged a little insurance policy." The day before the match, Michael Reeves showed up at Emma's door without warning. "Couldn't get you on the phone," he grunted, though his rough voice betrayed genuine concern. She let him in, grateful for a familiar face. Michael scanned the apartment, noting the shooting manuals spread across the table, tangible proof that she'd been practicing. Across the table, Michael leaned back, arms crossed. "So, the whole community's buzzing about you and Radcliffe," he said with a grin. They sat facing each other at Emma's kitchen table, the faint hum of city traffic filling the quiet. "Nathan will be proud, you know, not just of the shooting, of you stepping back into life again." Emma's eyes stung unexpectedly. "I'm not sure that's what this is. None of this was supposed to happen." Michael nodded, understanding. "The best fights never are, Em. But sometimes they're exactly the ones we need." He reached across, resting his weathered hand over hers. "You're not in this alone. I made some calls. They'll be friends in the crowd tomorrow." As he reached the door to leave, he turned back. "One more thing. Watch your six with Radcliffe. Men like him don't lose easy, and they sure don't forgive it when they do. Nathan would tell you the same." Emma nodded, grateful for both the warning and the familiar military phrase. "I will. And Michael, thank you. For the pass. For everything." He smiled faintly. "Just keeping a promise to a brother. That's what we do." Blake Radcliffe's probe into Emma Miller had started as wounded pride. By midweek, it had grown into a full-blown obsession, consuming his time more than any training ever had. The background reports still infuriated him. No criminal record, no competitive record, no social presence. Not even a parking ticket. On paper, she was a ghost. "Focus on Virginia Beach," Blake told his investigator. "That's where she lived before Boston. Check clubs, ranges, anyone who might have known her. And that ring she keeps fiddling with, find out about her husband." The investigator's tone stayed professional despite the impatience in Blake's voice. "Understood, sir, but marriage files in Virginia, I don't care how. The event's in 2 days. I want answers now." Blake hung up and stared at his trophy wall. Center among the accolades hung his Olympic gold medal from 8 years ago. The young Blake in the photo smiled with genuine joy, an emotion that had long since been replaced by pressure and pride. Then, late that night, his phone rang. His investigator again. "Virginia Beach was the key, Mr. Radcliffe. Emma Miller is the widow of Master Chief Nathan Miller, U.S. Navy SEAL, killed in action 3 years ago. Highly decorated sniper." Blake froze. "A SEAL sniper? Are you sure?" "Positive. I spoke to one of his former teammates. Apparently, Miller trained his wife. They called it a hobby, but he took it seriously. Word is, she had a natural gift, exceptional control and focus." Blake's pulse quickened. "Anything else?" "One more thing," the investigator replied. Nathan Miller's call sign was the Ghost. He was known for making shots no one else could. Held several unofficial distance records. When the call ended, Blake sat motionless, the truth hitting like recoil. Emma Miller wasn't lucky, and she wasn't a fraud. She was the student of a legend. The story he'd been spinning in his head, exposing a fluke, was unraveling. And in its place rose something more dangerous. A widow carrying her husband's legacy, standing up to a privileged champion. Across the city, Emma had no idea her opponent had uncovered the truth. She was too focused on preparing. On Thursday evening, Rebecca Johnson called again. "Ms. Miller, there's been another update. The board approved a new scoring system. Each station will be weighted by difficulty. The final one's worth 30%. Emma sighed softly. "Let me guess, the last station features a weapon Radcliffe specializes in." Rebecca hesitated. "A custom Macmillan TAC 338. Only 5 in civilian use in this region. It's his signature rifle." Emma's brow furrowed. She had strong pistol training thanks to Nathan, but rifles at that range were another world. After the call, she sat at her table, thinking through every variable. If Blake was already digging into her past, it was only a matter of time before he found Nathan's name. The next morning, Emma drove to a private long-range facility outside the city. A black SUV with government plates was already there. Leaning against it was a tall man with unmistakable special ops posture. "Mrs. Miller?" he called. "Commander Wilson. Team 3. I served with Nathan in Baghdad, back in 16. Emma studied him carefully. "I don't recall Nathan mentioning you." We weren't in the same squad, he said evenly, but in the teams, everyone knew the ghost. He nodded toward the range. Heard you might want some tips on the Macmillan TAC 338. I've worked with it before. For the next 4 hours, Wilson guided her through the weapon's nuances, adjusting her stance, explaining wind calls, teaching subtle control of breathing and trigger reset. Nathan taught you well with sidearms, he noted as she landed another tight grouping. Same discipline here, just magnified. Trust your training. By mid-afternoon, she was hitting targets at distances that had once felt impossible. As they packed up, Wilson handed her a small, weathered notebook. Nathan's wind and distance formulas. He wrote them himself. Might help tomorrow. Emma accepted it with quiet reverence. Thank you, Commander. But why help me? He paused. Because when you lose a brother, you take care of what mattered to him. Nathan talked about you often, said you had the calmest hands he'd ever seen on a civilian. As Wilson walked away, Emma realized this competition had become more than a test of skill. It was now a stand between two worlds, the privileged arrogance of entitlement against the quiet strength of discipline and legacy. The contrast between Blake and Nathan was striking. Blake flaunted success, while Nathan had lived quiet excellence. Showy wealth versus humble service. That evening, in his penthouse high above the city, Blake finally received the full confirmation of Emma's link to the late SEAL sniper. With every new detail, Nathan Miller's commendations, his reputation among elite units, and a classified mission that had ended his life, Blake's confidence faltered. He poured another drink, ignoring Jessica's uneasy glance. It doesn't change anything, he insisted. Skill beats sentiment every time. Jessica studied him with growing concern. Blake, maybe it's time to step back. Pay the donation. Cancel the match. This is getting messy. He slammed his glass onto the counter. Cancel and make it look like I'm scared of her? No. Tomorrow goes exactly as planned. He picked up his phone, dialing from memory. It's Blake. Everything's set for tomorrow? The call was short. When he hung up, Jessica was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. What was that about? She asked quietly. Blake smiled thinly. Just making sure the field's even, my dear. Nothing more. By morning, the elite shooters club buzzed like never before. What had begun as a private duel had turned into a public, media-covered event. Rebecca Johnson oversaw the final checks, frowning as she noticed tiny inconsistencies across several stations. Minor adjustments that would only trip up those unfamiliar with the weapons. Emma arrived dressed simply in jeans and a navy button-down, carrying a small duffel with Nathan's old notebook. Rebecca met her quietly. I checked everything. Some irregularities, nothing I can officially report, but enough to give someone inside knowledge an edge. Emma nodded. Thanks for the warning. Blake entered next, surrounded by sponsors and crew in branded gear. His grin was polished but cold. Miss Miller, he greeted, drawing out her name. I trust you slept well. Just remember, the spotlight can be overwhelming. No shame in backing out. Emma met his gaze evenly. I'll be fine, Mr. Radcliffe. My husband taught me how to handle pressure. The range looked more like an arena, complete with live scoreboards and 3 certified range masters. As Emma prepared for her first station, she spotted several men in the back, unmistakably military. Among them was Michael Reeves. His subtle nod steadied her. Through the first rounds, Blake's precision reflected years of competition. Emma's approach was quieter, disciplined, marked by stillness between each shot that hinted at real combat training. By the 4th station, Blake led slightly. At the 5th, Emma noticed the issue. The 6 hours trigger pull was heavier than standard. Remembering Nathan's words, equipment fails. Conditions change. Adapt and overcome. She adjusted her stance and still matched Blake's score. As they advanced, a pattern became clear. Blake dominated with flashy competition weapons. Emma excelled with military-grade arms. By the 8th station, his lead had nearly vanished. The crowd, once polite, now cheered openly for her calm, unshowy precision. Before the 9th stage, Blake approached her. Impressive, Mrs. Miller. Your husband would be proud. The ghost techniques, hard to mistake. I did my homework. Emma paused at the mention of Nathan's call sign, but kept her composure. Then you know he valued integrity above all else, Mr. Radcliffe. Something worth remembering. When the ninth station ended, they were tied. Everything came down to the final challenge, the Macmillan TC 38 at extreme distance. Emma immediately spotted subtle tampering with the scope and stock. Instead of protesting, she opened Nathan's notebook and used his notes to compensate. Blake shot first, 9 out of 10 inside the inner rings. A strong score, almost perfect. Not everyone's built for championship pressure, he said loudly enough for the audience. Emma settled behind the rifle, calm washing over her. She made her adjustments, relying on Nathan's formulas and instinct. The first 6 shots, bullseyes. The audience leaned forward, holding their breath. Then, a flash of light glinted near Blake's entourage, a deliberate distraction. Emma steadied her breath, refocused, and fired her final round. A perfect 10th bullseye. The crowd erupted into cheers that turned into a standing ovation. Final results, Rebecca announced. First place, Emma Miller. Second, Blake Radcliffe. Blake's practiced smile shattered. He offered a handshake stiff with anger. This isn't over, he muttered. For today it is, Emma said calmly. And you owe $50,000 to the Veteran Support Foundation. His composure broke. You think this means anything? A lucky widow beating years of experience? This whole thing was rigged. It was rigged, Rebecca interrupted, holding up her tablet. Security footage showing Blake's technician tampering with weapons, though not to Emma's benefit. Our system records every entry to the equipment room, she said. Gasps rippled through the audience. Admiration for Emma deepened. Not only had she won, she had done it despite sabotage. Blake stood frozen, realizing he hadn't just lost the match. He destroyed his own reputation. By Sunday morning, clips of Emma's perfect final round and Blake's meltdown had spread across social media, turning what began as a niche shooting competition into a viral story of humility, skill, and redemption. Emma woke to dozens of new messages. Messages flooded Emma's phone from journalists and sponsors, but she replied to none. Instead, she made a single call to Michael Reeves. It's gotten bigger than I expected, she said quietly. What do I do now? That depends, Michael answered. Do you want privacy or justice? Emma thought for a moment. Blake hasn't made the donation, and the equipment tampering was fraud. There should be accountability. Across town, in the Radcliffe penthouse, Blake's crisis team scrambled. We'll issue a statement, his publicist advised. Stress, pressure, momentary lapse. Then announce a generous donation to veteran causes and check into a wellness center. Blake shook his head sharply. No, I'm not apologizing. That woman had military training. That's the real unfair edge here. Their meeting was interrupted by a knock. 2 Boston police officers entered. Blake Radcliffe, one said, you need to answer questions regarding allegations of fraud and equipment tampering. We're also investigating possible gaming violations, given the wager attached to the event. Meanwhile, Emma sat across from retired Marine Colonel James Harrison, director of the Veteran Support Foundation. Several of our board members are also members of the Elite Shooters Club, he explained. They've already begun proceedings to strip Mr. Radcliffe of his championship records. And his tone softened. Mrs. Miller, our foundation is developing a marksmanship therapy program for veterans struggling to reintegrate. Shooting sports have proven remarkable for focus and recovery. We'd be honored if you'd take part. 3 days later, Emma received a settlement offer from Blake's attorneys, a $100,000 donation, double the original amount, a formal apology, and a request for a private meeting before any public statements. The meeting took place in a neutral conference room. Blake entered with his lawyer, the usual arrogance gone. His designer clothes had been replaced by a plain suit. Mrs. Miller, he began, I want to apologize. I built my entire identity around being the best. When I was threatened, I reacted poorly, criminally even. The rehearsed tone faltered, giving way to sincerity. I've never competed against someone who shoots for something beyond trophies or fame. It was humbling. Emma regarded him evenly. Mr. Radcliffe, I didn't compete to unsettle anyone. I was keeping a promise to my husband. Your choices dishonored both the sport and the cause you pledged to support. Blake nodded, genuine regret in his eyes. That's why I increased the donation and accepted a 3-year suspension from all competitions. The papers were signed. As they stood to leave, Blake extended a hand. For what it's worth, you're the finest shooter I've ever faced. Your husband taught you well. Emma accepted the handshake briefly. He'd say, I was already a good student, that the right teacher just helps you find what's already inside. 2 weeks later, Emma stood inside the newly opened training range at the Veteran Support Foundation's Rehabilitation Center, funded by Blake's donation and support from major manufacturers. Her first class included 6 veterans, each carrying visible and invisible scars. Good morning, she began, her voice steady. My name is Emma Miller. I'm not a soldier or a champion, just someone who learned that the steadiest hands often belong to those who've survived the deepest tremors. Today, we start with the basics: how to stand, how to breathe, how to focus. 6 months later, at the Foundation's annual fundraiser, Emma addressed the crowd. A year ago, I stepped into a shooting range for the first time in 3 years to keep a promise to my late husband, she said. I thought I was just revisiting an old skill. Instead, that day changed everything. It led to this program and this community. When the Foundation announced the creation of the Nathan Ghost Miller Excellence in Marksmanship Scholarship, honoring veterans who aspire to teach, tears welled in Emma's eyes. The first recipient, a former Army Ranger overcoming severe injuries, accepted the award proudly. Emma twisted her wedding ring once, whispering softly, "This one's for you, Nathan, for everything you taught me about standing my ground." Perhaps her greatest victory wasn't defeating a disgraced champion, but finding her way back to life, building something that honored both memory and purpose. For everyone who had followed her story, from being dismissed at the Elite Shooters Club to leading a national program, the message was unmistakable: never underestimate the quiet ones. Behind stillness can lie the fiercest resolve, the sharpest discipline, and the kind of strength that needs no audience. And for anyone ever overlooked or ignored, Emma Miller's journey stood as proof. How one woman turned a moment of disrespect into a movement of respect, one perfect shot at a time.